The parking garage beneath Morrison Tech was nearly empty at 7:30 p.m. Just a few scattered cars belonging to the overtime crew and the security team. Lena Martinez preferred it this way. The quiet solitude of late evenings when most people had gone home. It meant fewer crowds, fewer chances of unexpected encounters, fewer moments of vulnerability. It had been 8 months since she'd left Boston. 8 months since she'd walked away from Garrett Chen with nothing but 2 suitcases, a carefully constructed exit strategy, and one crucial piece of insurance she'd never told anyone about, the audio file. Time-stamped March 15th of the previous year. Lived on 3 separate cloud accounts under encrypted passwords. Garrett's voice crystal clear, making threats specific enough to be prosecutable. If you ever try to leave me, I will find you. I will destroy everything you've built. I will make sure everyone knows what a pathetic, ungrateful. The rest was too explicit to think about without her hands shaking. Lena had recorded it during one of his rages, her phone hidden in her purse as he'd blocked the door of their apartment, his controlled fury spilling into words he'd never dared say in public. She'd kept the recording as insurance. As evidence, as proof that she wasn't crazy, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't being too sensitive as he'd always claimed. She'd never used it, never needed to, because for 8 months, Garrett hadn't found her. She'd been careful. New city, new name on the lease, minimal social media, different career path. Lena Martinez, software developer at Morrison Tech, bore little resemblance to Elena Chen, marketing consultant in Boston's financial district. Until tonight, Lena was halfway to her car when she felt it. That prickling awareness of being watched. She stopped, keys gripped between her fingers in the defensive position she'd learned in self-defense classes, and scanned the garage. "Hello, Elena." The voice came from behind a concrete pillar and Lena's entire body went cold. Garrett emerged slowly, dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His expression carefully neutral, in that way that meant he was furious but controlling it. "My name is Lena," she said, proud that her voice came out steady. "And you need to leave now." "Lena," Garrett repeated, tasting the name like it offended him. "Is that what you're calling yourself now? Did you really think changing your name would keep me from finding you? How did you—" Lena stopped, not wanting to give him any information. "Find you." Garrett smiled, cold and triumphant. "LinkedIn, actually. Your company posted about hiring new developers, included a team photo. You changed your hair, lost weight. But I'd recognize you anywhere, Elena. You're mine, you'll always be mine." "I'm not yours," Lena said, taking a step backward toward her car. "We're done, Garrett. Have been for 8 months. You need to accept that and move on." "Move on," Garrett's voice rose slightly, the control slipping. "You think I can just move on after you humiliated me, after you left without a word, made me look like a fool to everyone we knew? Do you have any idea what people said, what they assumed?" "I left because you were hurting me," Lena said quietly. "Because I was afraid of you, because staying was slowly destroying me." "I never hurt you," Garrett snapped. "I loved you. Everything I did was because I loved you, and this is how you repay me. By running away like a coward." Lena's hand tightened around her keys. "Garrett, leave. I'm asking you one more time, leave, or I'm calling security." "Call them," Garrett challenged, moving closer. "Tell them what? That your concerned ex-boyfriend drove across the country to make sure you're okay? That I'm worried about you living alone in a strange city? I'm not doing anything illegal, Elena. I'm just talking to you." He was right, and they both knew it. Standing in a parking garage, having a conversation. There was nothing actionable about it. Nothing the police could arrest him for. He'd always been careful about that. Always staying just inside legal boundaries while making her life hell. "What do you want?" Lena asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "I want you to come home," Garrett said, his tone shifting to something softer, more manipulative. "I want us to fix this, Elena. We were good together. You know we were. Whatever problems we had, we can work through them. I've been seeing a therapist." "You're not in therapy," Lena interrupted. "You're telling me what you think I want to hear, so I'll come back. It's what you always do. Make promises. Say you'll change. Convince me I'm overreacting. But you never change, Garrett. You just get better at hiding it." Garrett's expression darkened. "You have no idea what I've been through these past 8 months. The embarrassment, the questions. Dealing with your parents, asking where you went. You told my parents I left." Lena's voice rose. She'd specifically avoided contacting her family because she knew Garrett would use them to find her. "Of course I told them," Garrett said. "They had a right to know their daughter abandoned her life without explanation. They're worried about you, Elena. Your mother cries every time I call. The manipulation was so transparent it would have been laughable if it wasn't so enraging. Don't contact my parents again. Don't contact me again. We're done, Garrett, permanently." "We're done when I say we're done," Garrett replied. And there it was, the real him, the one that emerged when his charm didn't work. "You don't get to just walk away from me, from us, from 3 years of commitment. 3 years of you controlling every aspect of my life," Lena corrected. "Monitoring my phone, dictating what I wore, who I could see, where I could go. That wasn't a relationship, Garrett. That was ownership. I was protecting you," Garrett started. "From what?" Lena interrupted. "From having friends, from having a career, from having any identity separate from you. That's not protection, that's prison." Garrett moved closer, and Lena backed up until she hit her car. "You're being dramatic," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet. "You always were too emotional, too sensitive, making everything into a bigger deal than it was." "Garrett, step back," Lena said, her hand moving to her purse where her phone was. "You're too close." "I'm too close," Garrett laughed bitterly. "I drove 16 hours to see you, Elena. I tracked you down, cleared my schedule, came all this way because I love you, and you're telling me I'm too close." "Yes," Lena said firmly. "Step back now." "Or what?" Garrett challenged. "You'll call the police, tell them what? That I'm having a conversation with you, that I'm trying to save our relationship." A car door slammed nearby, the sound echoing through the parking garage. Both Lena and Garrett turned to see someone walking toward them. A tall man in his late 30s, dressed in business casual, a laptop bag over his shoulder. "Everything okay here?" the man asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp, assessing the situation. Lena recognized him. David Torres, the senior security architect who worked on her floor. She'd interacted with him a handful of times on cross-department projects. He'd always been professional, friendly, and notably observant in a way that suggested he noticed more than he let on. "We're fine," Garrett said quickly, his demeanor shifting immediately to charming and non-threatening. "Just catching up with my girlfriend, private conversation." "Ex-girlfriend," Lena corrected, her voice stronger now that she wasn't alone. "And we're done talking, he was just leaving." David looked between them, clearly picking up on the tension. "Lena, you need a walk to your car." "She's at her car," Garrett pointed out, irritation bleeding through his pleasant facade. "I meant a safe departure," David said, his tone still calm but with steel underneath. "Lena," Garrett's expression darkened. "Who is this, your new boyfriend? Did you waste any time at all before replacing me?" "This is my colleague," Lena said. "And yes, David, I'd appreciate that." "You're not going anywhere," Garrett said, moving to block her path to the driver's door. "We're not done talking." "Actually, you are," David interrupted, moving between Garrett and Lena with casual confidence. "This is private property, and Lena has asked you to leave, so you have 2 choices. Walk away now, or wait for security to escort you out. Your call." Garrett looked at David with barely concealed rage. "This is none of your business." "It became my business when I saw a woman backed against her car looking uncomfortable," David replied. "So what's it going to be?" For a long moment, Garrett stood there, clearly weighing his options. Then he looked past David to Lena. "This isn't over, Elena," he said quietly. "Kaya can't hide from me. I will always find you, always." "That sounded like a threat," David observed. "Want me to call the police?" "It's not a threat," Garrett said quickly. "It's a promise to never give up on the woman I love." He walked away then, disappearing into the stairwell. David waited until the door closed before turning to Lena. "You okay?" he asked gently. Lena realized she was shaking. "Yes, thank you, if you hadn't shown up." "But I did," David interrupted. "Lena, that guy. Is he going to be a problem?" "Probably," Lena admitted. "That's my ex, Garrett. I left him 8 months ago, moved here to get away from him. I didn't think he'd find me." "But he did," David said. "Which means he's been looking. That level of determination isn't just about getting closure, Lena. That's obsessive behavior." "I know," Lena whispered. "I know what he is. Why do you think I left?" David was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "Have you reported this, filed a restraining order?" "I tried. In Boston." But Garrett is careful. He never leaves evidence, never makes direct threats in front of witnesses. The police said there wasn't enough to justify a protective order. Lena's voice was bitter. He's a financial consultant with a spotless reputation. I'm just the ex-girlfriend making dramatic accusations. That's not what I saw just now, David said. I saw someone being intimidated by someone they're clearly afraid of. That's not nothing. Lena looked at him, at the genuine concern in his expression, and felt something crack inside her. I have evidence, she heard herself say, of what he's really like. I've never used it because I was hoping I'd never have to. What kind of evidence? David asked carefully. Lena pulled out her phone with trembling hands, navigating to one of the encrypted cloud accounts. An audio recording from about a year ago, before I left, one of his rages where he threatened me explicitly. I recorded it as insurance in case he ever... She stopped. In case he ever came after me. And now he has, David finished. Lena, that recording could be exactly what you need for a restraining order, especially combined with what just happened. Him showing up at your workplace, following you to your car, the veiled threats. I don't know if it's enough, Lena said, and using it means escalating, means making this an actual legal battle. Garrett has money, connections, lawyers. And you have proof of his real character, David interrupted. Lena, I know this is scary, but doing nothing isn't safer. He found you once. He'll find you again. Wouldn't you rather face this with legal backing instead of just hoping he goes away? Lena knew David was right. She'd been carrying this recording for over a year, telling herself it was protection, insurance, evidence. But really, it had been a security blanket, something that made her feel less helpless without requiring her to actually act. I need to think about it, Lena said. Fair enough, David replied. But Lena, I meant what I said before. This isn't over. That guy isn't going to just accept that you've moved on, so whatever you decide, make it soon, before he escalates. As David walked Lena to her car and waited until she was safely inside with the doors locked, she pulled up the audio file on her phone. The timestamp mocked her. March 15, 2023, 11:47 p.m. The night Garrett had cornered her in their apartment, blocking the door, explaining in explicit detail what he'd do if she ever tried to leave. She'd recorded it thinking she'd use it as leverage if she needed to escape. Instead, she'd simply left while he was at work, too afraid to confront him even with evidence. But David was right. This wasn't over. Garrett had found her, and he'd made it clear he wasn't giving up, which meant she had two choices. Run again, start over somewhere else, always looking over her shoulder, or finally use the weapon she'd been carrying all along. Lena sat in her car in the empty parking garage, her finger hovering over the play button. Garrett's voice would fill the car, angry, threatening, revealing the man behind the charming facade. She'd been holding on to this recording for so long. Maybe it was time to actually use it. Maybe it was time to stop running and start fighting back. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her apartment with all the locks engaged, the audio file playing on repeat through her headphones, memorizing every word, every inflection, every piece of evidence she'd captured. Garrett's voice, controlled at first. Elena, we need to talk about boundaries. You seem to think you have freedom to just do whatever you want. Then escalating, I've been patient with you, too patient. But if you think you can disrespect me, embarrass me in front of our friends, you're badly mistaken. And finally, the part that made her hands shake every time if you ever try to leave me. I will find you. I don't care where you go, how far you run, I will find you. And I will make sure you regret ever thinking you could walk away from me. Do you understand? You're mine, Elena. You will always be mine. 12 minutes and 43 seconds of evidence. Threat specific enough to be prosecutable. Admission of control explicit enough to establish pattern of abuse. And most damning, the cold calculation in his voice when he described exactly how he'd track her if she left. The recording had terrified her a year ago. Now it felt like power. At 6 a.m., Lena called the Seattle Police Department non-emergency line and asked about filing a report for stalking and harassment. The officer who answered was professional but direct. She'd need to come in person, bring any evidence she had, and be prepared for a potentially lengthy process. By 8 a.m., she was sitting across from Detective Maria Santos in a small interview room at the precinct, her phone connected to a speaker. Are you sure you want to play this? Detective Santos asked. Once it's part of an official report, it becomes evidence. You won't be able to take it back." "I'm sure," Lena said, pressing play. Detective Santos's expression grew progressively darker as Garrett's threats filled the room when it ended. She was quiet for a long moment. "Miss Martinez, this recording is extremely compelling," she finally said. "Direct threats of stalking, intimidation, controlling behavior. This is textbook documentation of abuse, combined with his appearance at your workplace last night. We have enough to file for an emergency protective order." "Really?" Lena felt something unclench in her chest. "In Boston, they said I didn't have enough evidence." "Boston failed you," Detective Santos said bluntly. "This recording alone should have been sufficient. Add in his recent actions, traveling across the country to confront you, showing up at your workplace, making veiled threats in front of a witness. We have a strong case." "What happens next?" Lena asked. "We file for the protective order today. Given the explicit nature of the threats and the interstate stalking, I'm also going to contact the FBI's Domestic Violence Task Force. Crossing state lines to harass someone is a federal offense." Detective Santos made notes. "I'll need a statement from your co-worker who witnessed last night's confrontation. Can you provide his contact information?" "David Torres," Lena said, pulling out her phone. "I can text him." "Do that," Detective Santos replied. "And, Mrs. Martinez, I need you to understand. Filing this report will likely make your ex-partner angry. Men like him don't respond well to being held accountable. You need to take precautions." "I've been taking precautions for 8 months," Lena said quietly. "I left everything behind to get away from him. I changed my name, my career path, my entire life. But he still found me, so maybe it's time to stop hiding and start fighting." "Good," Detective Santos said approvingly. "Because that recording, that's one hell of a weapon. Let's make sure we use it effectively." Lena texted David from the precinct. "Detective needs your statement about last night. Can you come to Seattle PD downtown? I'm filing a protective order." His response came within minutes. "On my way. Are you okay?" "Getting there," Lena typed back. "Thank you for last night. You might have saved my life. You saved your own life," David replied, "by being smart enough to have evidence. See you soon." David arrived 20 minutes later, dressed professionally despite the early hour. He gave his statement clearly and precisely, describing Lena's obvious fear, Garrett's intimidating behavior, the explicit threat about always finding her. The guy was clearly trying to scare her, David told Detective Santos, and succeeding. "If I hadn't walked up when I did, I don't know what he would have done." After David finished his statement, Detective Santos stepped out to process the paperwork, leaving them in the interview room together. "Thank you for coming," Lena said. "I know it's not exactly part of your job description to get involved in co-workers' personal drama." "This isn't drama," David said firmly. "Drama is office gossip or personality conflicts. This is a dangerous person stalking you." "There's a difference," he paused. "Can I ask, how long were you with him?" 3 years, Lena admitted. "It wasn't bad at first, or maybe it was, and I just didn't recognize it. He was charming, successful, attentive, made me feel special. Then slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, that attention became monitoring. Those thoughtful gestures became control. By the time I realized what was happening, I was so isolated, so dependent on him, I didn't know how to leave." "But you did leave," David pointed out. "Barely," Lena said, "and only because I planned it for months, saved money secretly, lined up this job, created an exit strategy. The day I left, I packed 2 suitcases while he was at work and disappeared, left my phone, my laptop, anything he could use to track me, started completely over." "That takes incredible courage," David said. "Or incredible desperation," Lena replied. "I was terrified every day that he'd find me. And now he has, and I have to face the thing I've been running from." "You're not facing it alone," David said. "You have that recording. You have my testimony. You have the police taking this seriously. And—" he hesitated. "You have me. If you want backup, I meant what I said last night. I'm not comfortable with the idea of that guy being out there while you deal with this alone." Lena looked at him, at the genuine concern in his expression. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." "I know enough," David replied. "I know you're brilliant at your job. I know you're kind to junior developers even when you're swamped with your own work. I know you always have emergency snacks in your desk drawer that you share with anyone who's having a rough day. And He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face. I know what it's like to watch someone you care about be hurt by someone they're afraid of. My sister had an ex like yours. It took her 5 years to get away from him, and she did it alone because I didn't understand how bad it was until too late. So now when I see the signs, I don't ignore them, I do something. Your sister, is she okay now? Lena asked. She's great, David said, smiling slightly. Married to someone who actually deserves her, running her own business. Happy, but it took years to get there, and she carries the scars of those 5 years with her ex. I can't change what happened to her, but I can make sure I don't stand by and do nothing when I see someone else in a similar situation. So this is about your sister, Lena said, trying to keep disappointment out of her voice. It started that way, David admitted. But Lena, I've been wanting to ask you to coffee for the past 3 months. I just didn't know how to do it without seeming unprofessional, since we worked together last night. When I saw you backed against your car looking terrified. His jaw tightened. That wasn't professional concern. That was personal terror that something might happen to you. Lena's breath caught. David! I'm not trying to take advantage of a crisis, David continued quickly, and I completely understand if this is the worst possible timing, but I need you to know, my investment in your safety isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about protecting someone I've been hoping to know better. Before Lena could respond, Detective Santos returned with paperwork. Good news. The judge has granted an emergency protective order. Garrett Chen is prohibited from contacting you, coming within 500 feet of you, or visiting your workplace. Violation is an arrestable offense. How will he know about it? Lena asked. We'll serve him at his hotel, Detective Santos replied. He checked into the Riverside Inn last night. Officers are heading there now. He'll be formally notified of the order and warned of the consequences of violation. Lena felt her phone buzz, a text from an unknown number. You think a piece of paper is going to stop me? You're mine, Elena, always have been. Always will be. She showed it to Detective Santos, whose expression hardened. That was fast. He's already violating the order. Electronic contact is specifically prohibited. Forward that to me immediately. I'm adding it to the case file and informing the officers serving the order. Is he going to be arrested? Lena asked. He should be, Detective Santos said, but sometimes it takes multiple violations before judges will authorize arrest on protective order breaches. However, this plus the recording, plus his appearance last night. We're building a strong case. Keep your phone on you. Document everything if he contacts you again in any way. Call 911 immediately. As they left the precinct, David walked Lena to her car, which she'd moved to a public lot for safety. The morning sun was bright, but Lena felt cold, the reality of what she'd just set in motion settling over her. He's going to be furious, she said quietly. The recording, the protective order, the police involvement. Everything he's worked to hide is being exposed. He's going to come after me harder. Which is why you're not going to be alone, David said firmly. Lena, I want to help, practically. I mean, can I give you my number? Not for anything. For emergency contact if you feel unsafe. We work together, Lena pointed out. So you already have my number. I have your work number, David corrected. I want your personal number. I want to be someone you can call at 2 a.m. if you hear something outside your apartment and you're scared. Someone who will actually answer and actually show up. Lena looked at him. At this man who'd walked into her crisis without hesitation, who was offering support without demanding anything in return. Okay, she said, pulling out her phone. But David, you need to understand. Garrett is dangerous. Being associated with me might put you at risk too. I'm a security architect, David replied with a slight smile. I literally spend my days planning for worst-case scenarios. I can handle your ex-boyfriend. They exchanged numbers, and David insisted on following Lena home to make sure she arrived safely. As she pulled into her apartment complex, she saw him park nearby, waiting until she was inside before driving away. Her phone buzzed with a text, door locked, all windows secured. Lena smiled despite herself, checking both before responding. Yes and yes, good. Get some rest. You've had an exhausting morning. I'll check in later. Lena collapsed on her couch, the audio file still on her phone, now part of official police records. The recording that had been her secret weapon for over a year was finally being used. And it felt like the beginning of something, Not just legal protection, but actual freedom. The ability to stop running, to stand her ground, to fight back with evidence instead of just fear. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Against her better judgment, Lena opened it. "You're going to regret this. Elena recording me without permission. Filing false reports. I have lawyers, I have resources, and I have all the time in the world to make sure you pay for what you've done." Lena took a screenshot, forwarded it to Detective Santos, then blocked the number. 2 minutes later, her phone rang. "Detective Santos, officers just served the order." The detective said, "Mr. Chen was not receptive, made several threats against you in front of the officers, which they documented. He's being detained now for violating the order within minutes of being served. He'll be held pending arraignment." "He's in custody." Lena felt lightheaded with relief. "For now," Detective Santos cautioned. "He'll likely make bail tomorrow, but Lena, this is good. It establishes that he has no intention of respecting legal boundaries. Every violation strengthens your case. Keep documenting everything." After hanging up, Lena sat in the quiet of her apartment. Processing. Garrett was in custody. The recording was with police. The protective order was in effect for the first time in 8 months. In over a year, really. She wasn't carrying the weight of this alone. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Detective Santos called me. Heard your ex got arrested. How are you doing, scared?" Lena typed honestly. "But also relieved." "Is that wrong? To be relieved that he's locked up?" "Not wrong at all," David replied. "That's completely valid. Want company? I can bring dinner. We can watch something mindless. You can decompress in a space where you're not alone." Lena hesitated. Accepting David's help with legal matters was one thing. Inviting him into her personal space was another. But the thought of spending the evening alone, jumping at every sound, replaying confrontations in her mind, that seemed worse. "Okay," she typed. "But nothing fancy. I don't have the energy for fancy." "Pizza and a Marvel movie it is," David replied. "See you at 6. As Lena showered and changed, trying to wash away the stress of the day, she thought about the audio recording. For so long it had been her secret. Evidence she held but never used. A security blanket that made her feel less helpless without requiring action. But David was right. The recording wasn't just evidence, it was power. And maybe it was time she stopped being afraid to use it. Garrett made bail the next afternoon, as Detective Santos had predicted. But the conditions were strict. No contact with Lena, mandatory check-ins with authorities, GPS monitoring, and surrender of his passport. The federal investigation into interstate stalking had been officially opened. "He's furious," Detective Santos warned Lena over the phone. The bail hearing did not go well for him. The recording was played in court. His lawyer tried to suppress it, claiming you recorded without his knowledge. But Washington is a one-party consent state. You were legally entitled to record a conversation you were part of. The judge was unimpressed with Mr. Chen's behavior. "What does that mean for me?" Lena asked. "It means stay vigilant," Detective Santos replied. "The GPS monitor will alert us if he comes within 500 feet of your apartment or workplace. But men like him find ways around restrictions. Don't let your guard down." Lena hadn't planned to, but having David show up every evening with dinner, having co-workers at Morrison Tech informed by security about the situation, having Detective Santos checking in daily, it made the vigilance feel less like paranoia and more like community protection. "You're hovering," Lena told David on the 5th evening, as he insisted on checking all her windows before settling on the couch with takeout. "I'm being thorough," David corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Lena smiled despite herself. "David, I appreciate everything you've done, really. But you've spent every evening here for almost a week. You must have a life you need to get back to." "I do have a life," David agreed. "And right now, making sure you're safe is part of it, Lena. I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere until I'm confident Garrett has actually backed off." "He's being monitored," Lena pointed out. "GPS tracker, regular check-ins, federal investigation. If he comes near me, he goes to prison." "If the monitoring works," David said. "Technology isn't infallible. GPS can be spoofed, disabled, worked around. I've spent 15 years in security. I know how many ways there are to beat systems that are supposed to be foolproof." Lena set down her food, studying David's face. You're really worried about this. I'm really worried about you, David corrected. Lena, that recording, the things he said, that's not someone who lets go easily. That's someone who sees you as property he has ownership over. Those are the most dangerous cases. I know, Lena said quietly. Why do you think I ran? Why do you think I recorded him in the first place? I knew what he was capable of, even if I couldn't prove it to anyone else. Until now, David said. That recording changed everything. Gave you legal standing, got you protection, established a pattern that law enforcement takes seriously. You were smart, Lena, keeping that evidence, knowing when to use it. I was terrified, Lena admitted. For over a year I carried that file around like a talisman, told myself if things got bad enough I'd use it. But I never did, just kept running instead. Running kept you alive, David pointed out. There's no shame in survival. Lena's phone buzzed. Detective Santos, she answered on speaker. Lena, I need to inform you of a development. The detective said. Garrett Chen cut off his GPS monitor approximately 30 minutes ago. Lena's blood went cold. What? He removed the ankle monitor, which triggered an immediate alert. Officers are en route to his hotel, but he's not there. His car is gone. We've issued a warrant for his arrest, but right now we don't know where he is. He's coming here, Lena whispered. He knows where I live. He's going to... We're sending patrol units to your apartment complex immediately, Detective Santos interrupted. Lock your doors, stay inside, call 911 if you see or hear anything suspicious. Officers should arrive within 10 minutes. After Detective Santos hung up, Lena and David stared at each other. Pack a bag, David said, already moving. You're not staying here tonight. Hell, you're not staying here until Garrett is back in custody. Where am I supposed to go? Lena asked. But she was already grabbing essentials. Laptop, phone charger, medication. My place, David said. It's a secured building, doorman, cameras, the works. Garrett doesn't know where I live, doesn't know I'm involved beyond that one night in the parking garage. You'll be safe there. David, I can't just move into your apartment. It's not moving in. It's temporary safety, David interrupted. Lena, Garrett has proven he doesn't care about legal consequences. He cut off a court-ordered monitor, knowing it would trigger an immediate warrant. That's desperation, and desperate people are dangerous. So, yes, you're coming to my place and we're not arguing about it. They were heading to the parking garage when Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Elena? Garrett's voice tight with barely controlled rage. We need to talk, face to face, now. I'm not talking to you, Lena said, her voice shaking. You violated the protective order. You removed your monitor. You're going to be arrested. I don't care about arrest, Garrett interrupted. I care about you understanding the mistake you've made. That recording. You think that makes you powerful. All it does is prove you're a liar. You manipulated me, recorded me without my knowledge, twisted my words. Your words were threats, Lena said, fury overriding fear. Explicit, detailed threats about what you'd do if I left you. I didn't twist anything, Garrett. I just gave people evidence of who you really are. Who I really am is someone who loved you, Garrett said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet. Someone who gave you everything, and this is how you repay me, by destroying my reputation, my career, my life. You destroyed your own life by being abusive, Lena shot back. I just documented it. Where are you? Garrett demanded. I'm outside your apartment. Your car's gone. Where did you run to this time, Elena? Lena's hand tightened on the phone. Know where you'll find me. And Garrett, the police are looking for you right now. Every minute you spend on this call. They're getting closer. Turn yourself in before you make this worse. Worse? Garrett laughed bitterly. It can't get worse. You've already destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my freedom. So what do I have to lose by finishing this? The threat was implicit but clear. Lena felt David's hand on her shoulder, steadying her. You have your freedom to lose, Lena said, proud that her voice didn't shake. You're already looking at federal charges. If you hurt me, if you even try, that's attempted murder on top of everything else. Is revenge really worth spending the next 20 years in prison? You don't get it, Garrett said. This isn't about revenge, it's about justice, about making sure you face consequences for what you've done. I'm recording this, Lena said suddenly, the idea hitting her. Right now, everything you're saying, so go ahead, Garrett. Keep threatening me. Give me more evidence for the prosecution." The line went silent. Then, "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Lena challenged. "I recorded you once before without you knowing. What makes you think I'm not doing it again?" She was bluffing. She hadn't thought to start recording the call, but Garrett didn't know that. "You manipulative—" Garrett started. "Careful," Lena interrupted. "Everything you say is being documented, so choose your next words carefully. Are you going to make more threats? Admit to violating the protective order? Tell me exactly how you're planning to hurt me, because all of that is going straight to Detective Santos and the federal prosecutor." Another long silence. Then, "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Lena said firmly, "because here's what's going to happen, Garrett. You're going to turn yourself in. You're going to accept that we're done, permanently, and you're going to move on with your life, because I've already moved on with mine. The alternative is spending the next decade in prison, because I will use every piece of evidence I have to make sure you're prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So what's it going to be?" The call ended. Lena lowered her phone, her hands shaking. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless," David said. "Probably both," Lena admitted. "But I'm tired of being scared. Tired of letting him control my life even from a distance. That recording gave me power. Time to actually use it." As they drove to David's apartment, police called. Garrett had been located attempting to access Lena's apartment building and was arrested without incident. The call Lena had just received, which she had not actually recorded, had been traced and would be added to the evidence of harassment. "He's going back to jail," Detective Santos said, "and this time I don't think any judge is going to grant bail, not after he cut off monitoring, violated the protective order multiple times, and made direct threats. You're safe, Lena." Safe? The word felt foreign, impossible. But sitting in David's car, driving toward his secure building with Garrett finally in custody, Lena let herself believe it might actually be true. David's apartment was exactly what she'd expect from a security architect. Modern. Minimalist. With what seemed like cameras and sensors on every entry point. "I know it's a bit much," David said, noting her expression. "Occupational hazard. I can't help but see vulnerabilities everywhere." "Right now, it feels perfect," Lena replied, over the next few weeks as Garrett's case moved through the legal system. Lena slowly rebuilt her sense of safety. The federal charges were substantial. Interstate stalking, violation of protective orders, harassment, intimidation of a witness. His lawyers tried to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recording, the documented violations, the threatening calls. All of it painted a picture of obsessive, dangerous behavior. "They're offering a plea deal," Detective Santos informed Lena 6 weeks after Garrett's arrest. 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release with permanent no-contact order. The prosecutor thinks it's a good deal. Guarantees he's off the streets and under supervision long-term. "What happens if he violates after he's released?" Lena asked. "Immediate return to prison to serve the remainder of his sentence, plus additional charges," Detective Santos replied. "He'd be looking at a decade or more. Most offenders don't risk that." "Most offenders aren't Garrett," Lena said quietly, "which is why the supervised release is so strict," Detective Santos assured her. "GPS monitoring, regular psychological evaluation, mandatory anger management, prohibition on moving out of his designated area without permission. He'll have essentially no freedom for the next 8 years. And Lena, the recording you made, that was the linchpin of this entire case. Without it, he'd likely have gotten probation and a slap on the wrist. You saved yourself by having that evidence." After the call, Lena sat in David's apartment, which had become half hers over the past weeks, her belongings gradually migrating from her own place, and pulled up the audio file one last time, Garrett's voice, full of rage and threats. "If you ever try to leave me, I will find you." She'd been so afraid of this recording for so long, afraid of what it represented, afraid of what using it might trigger. But it had been her salvation, her proof that she wasn't crazy, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't being too sensitive. It had been her weapon, and she'd used it to win her freedom. "You okay?" David asked, appearing with 2 mugs of tea. "I was just thinking," Lena said, taking the offered mug. "For over a year, I carried that recording around like a secret, something I was ashamed of having, afraid to use, but it saved me, Keeping that evidence, being smart enough to document. It's the reason I'm sitting here instead of still running. You're remarkable, David said, sitting beside her. Not just for keeping the evidence, but for having the courage to actually use it when it mattered. A lot of people in your situation never report, never fight back, just keep running. I got tired of running, Lena admitted. And... She paused, looking at him. I had help you showing up that night, supporting me through all of this, giving me a safe place to stay. David, I couldn't have done this alone. Yes, you could have, David said firmly, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena said, Can I ask you something? Always. That first night. In the parking garage, you said you'd been wanting to ask me to coffee for months, was that true? Or were you just trying to make me feel less alone? David smiled. It was completely true. I've been halfway in love with you since you debugged that impossible server issue at 2 a.m. and then sent the whole team an email about proper sleep schedules. You're brilliant and kind and funny, and I've been trying to find the courage to ask you out for 3 months. This was not how I imagined a first date going, Lena said, gesturing at the apartment that had become her safe house. We can do it properly, David offered. Dinner, somewhere nice. Conversation about things that aren't protective orders and federal charges. I'd like that, Lena said. But David, I need you to understand. I'm still healing from 3 years with Garrett. I don't know how to be in a relationship that isn't toxic. Don't know how to trust someone without waiting for them to become controlling. Then we'll figure it out together, David said, taking her hand. At whatever pace feels right for you, I'm not going anywhere, Lena. And I'm not Garrett. I don't want to own you or control you. I just want to know you. The real you, without the fear. I don't know who that is yet, Lena admitted. I've been in survival mode for so long. Then let's find out together, David replied. Starting with dinner tomorrow night. Actual date, proper restaurant, conversation about anything except your ex. Sound good? Sounds perfect, Lena said. 6 months later, Lena stood in court as Garrett was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. He looked diminished in his prison uniform, none of the charm or confidence that had first attracted her visible now. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the court? The judge asked Garrett. I loved her, Garrett said, looking directly at Lena. Everything I did was because I loved her. She'll never find anyone who cares about her the way I do. That was not love, the judge said sharply. That was control, intimidation, and abuse, Mr. Chen. You will serve your full sentence, and upon release you will have no contact with Miss Martinez for the rest of your life. If you violate that order, you will return to prison. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Garrett said, but his eyes stayed on Lena. As they left the courthouse, David's arm around her shoulders, Lena felt the weight of 3 years of fear finally lifting. How do you feel? David asked. Free, Lena said simply. For the first time in years, I actually feel free. They walked to David's car. Their car, really, since they'd officially moved in together last month, and Lena pulled out her phone. She navigated to the encrypted cloud account, to the audio file that had been her secret weapon for so long. Can I delete it now? She asked David. The recording. It's been submitted as evidence. It's part of court records. I don't need to keep carrying it anymore. It's your choice, David said. But Lena, that recording was your power, your proof. Are you ready to let it go? Lena thought about it. The file had been her insurance, her evidence, her weapon, but it had also been her burden. A reminder of the worst of what Garrett had been, kept close out of fear he'd never really be gone. But he was gone now. Locked away for 3 years, supervised for 5 more after that, she'd won. I'm ready, Lena said, and deleted the file. 1 year later, Lena stood at a podium addressing a conference on domestic violence prevention, sharing her story. The relationship, the escape, the recording that had been her salvation. I kept that evidence for over a year before I used it, she told the audience. And I'm not going to tell you that's what everyone should do, because every situation is different. But what I will say is this. If you're in danger, document everything. Record threats when safe to do. Save texts. Emails, voicemails, because that evidence might be what saves your life. And if you're like I was, scared, isolated, convinced no one will believe you, remember that evidence speaks louder than charm. Documentation beats manipulation. The truth, when you have proof of it, is more powerful than any threat. After the presentation, several women approached Lena, sharing their own stories, asking for advice. She gave them Detective Santos's contact information, resources for legal help, strategies for staying safe. David waited patiently, letting her have these conversations, understanding that this was part of her healing, turning her trauma into purpose, her survival into advocacy. "Ready to go home?" he asked when the last conversation ended. "Yeah," Lena said, taking his hand. "Let's go home." Home, not a safe house or a hiding place, but an actual home she'd chosen, with a person she'd chosen, in a life she'd fought to reclaim. The audio file was gone, deleted from her devices and her constant thoughts, but its impact remained. In the freedom she'd won, the safety she'd claimed, and the voice she'd found to speak truth to power, Garrett had tried to silence her through fear. Instead, she'd used his own words to ensure he could never hurt her again. And that, Lena thought as David drove them through Seattle toward the home they'd built together, was the sweetest victory of all.